My name is Donna Lynch, and I am a wraparound and peer partner program specialist. I also have lived experience. Jacob Robert Shaw and I navigated systems together, and I'm so happy to be putting on this webinar for you in collaboration with the California Department of Social Services, formerly the Family Centered Practice Unit, and now the Wraparound Implementation Services Unit. It's WIPS. I don't remember what the P stands for because it's new and I'm going to figure it out. So the next time we see each other, I will absolutely know for a fact what WIPS stand for, but it's Wraparound Implementation Unit. Kayla Granderson is my partner in all things wraparound and peer partner work. We collaboratively work together with the Parent Partner Advisory Committee, who also pushed to have us have this webinar this afternoon today, and along with the peer hubs. So thank you again for joining us. We'll give everybody a few minutes to get themselves grounded and get their technology going. And in the meantime, I would love for everybody to introduce yourself here, please, with your name, your role, your county. And today's icebreaker is, what are you looking for with the fall weather fast approaching? Sweater weather is my jam, and I cannot wait to, we call it Uncle Knick-Knack's wardrobe, if anybody has seen the Addams Family, right? So we take out the summer wardrobe and you bring in the fall and winter wardrobe. I'm super excited to open up my bins. Thank you, Brianna. I love that. Yes, bring out my fall wardrobe and start getting those sweaters out, and then the jeans that are too heavy that you can't wear in the summer and the fall. So thank you all for joining us. Please introduce yourself, your name, your role, your county, and what are you looking for with the fall weather fast boots? Yes, Brenda, I love a good heel. That is for sure. I would like to let everybody know that this webinar is being recorded. So if you have anybody in your county or organization who isn't here with us this afternoon, please let them know. Do not fret. We are recording this. It will be on our website along with any corresponding materials that we will have available for you today. We have an amazing panel of presenters today, and I'm really excited about that. So without any other further ado, let's get started, yeah? All right, so again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Teaming with Family Serving Systems, our webinar today. And we're so glad that you're here and appreciate you taking your time out this afternoon to be with us for this very important conversation. Today's session is focused on strengthening and collaboration across family serving systems, bringing together partners from behavioral health, probation, child welfare, and also tribal considerations. Our goal is to explore how we can work together as a unified team in support of children and families, building a shared understanding, mutual respect, and a stronger partnerships. It is important to note that today's discussion is not about systems of care as a framework or model. Instead, we're focusing on the practice of teaming itself, how we can show up, communicate, collaborate with one another to best serve families in real time. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment. I don't know if Kayla is here with us today, but Kayla Granderson, she is my partner at the California Department of Social Services in the Wraparound Implementation Unit. She is an integral partner in all the work that we do here. Kayla and her team play a key role in supporting not only high fidelity wraparound practice across the state, but also uplifting the role and advancement for peer partners while ensuring our approaches remain family driven, culturally responsive, and grounded in collaboration. So thank you, Kayla, and the rest of the team at CDSS. Before that, I want to cover some housekeeping items for us today. Again, this webinar is being recorded, and both the recording and all of the materials shared today will be posted on our website. I will also be dropping them in the chat for you during our session. We will be monitoring the chat throughout for your questions and comments. There will be a targeted Q&A at the end of our presentation. We'll address as many of our questions as we can get to. And I also want to recognize that counties and organizations may have differing policies and procedures when it comes to teaming with family serving systems. If you have any specific questions to your local processes, please lean into your leadership for guidance after today's session. With that, I'm happy to introduce our first presenter, Gavin O'Sullivan, contractor, consultant, newly and he's newly retired and formerly with Placer County wraparound supervisor. Gavin O'Sullivan, thank you so very much for joining us in this space again, and I turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this collaborative space right here. So, yeah, let's jump into the first slide, if we could, James. Thank you. So the idea of being qualified, I just want to help, kind of do away with the notion that there are certain qualifications. I'm gonna qualify myself, and by qualify, kind of meaning, um, talk about maybe what I'm not and expectations. So I've been in the behavioral health and child welfare spheres for 30 years. I was with Placer County for all that time, and I do not speak for Placer County right now because I have happily moved into the private sphere now. But I learned a lot while I was there. But what I am not, I was not a manager. I was not a large program administrator, if you will. I was not, overseeing grants and things like that necessarily from the top end. So when we talk about a system of care and collaboration, I'm really coming from the practice end of things. I'm coming from the intervention and the kind of practitioner area. So I just want to, kind of say this is where my sharing is coming from. So I might miss things. I might miss things that have more of a 5 to 10,000 foot view. And so please, just consider that. But qualify yourself also. The mere fact that you are here and want to be a part of teaming and systems of care, that means that you're qualified. So I want to share the next story. If you could move to the next slide. So what does county mental health, behavioral health provide? So of course, county mental health, behavioral health. First, just also the, is it mental health? Is it behavioral health? The best that I can see is that there does seem to be a trend of moving language to behavioral health. And the best that I can get, no one ever took me aside and shared, this is why it's referred to as behavioral health. So if you know why, go ahead, put it in the comments. From what I can see, it is the better merger with substance use and other addictive sciences and treatments to be combined with mental health. So the term behavioral health seems to be a better umbrella for that. So I just kind of wanted to share just kind of some wording, because even I've been in this, in this work setting for all these years, and sometimes I'm like, why do we call things certain things? So just to say, that's my best understanding. So it makes sense, but they're interchangeable as far as most purposes. So I want to take us back maybe about 25 years. I am just learning about some of the different ways to be able to come alongside families. And I'm just starting to dip my toes in the wraparound waters. If you know about wraparound, it's amazingly collaborative, and but we don't have any peer partners, not one. But we hear that there are peer partners across the country that are happening, and that wraparound uses that. And so I'm trying to figure out how to create peer partners. And so I'm finding myself trying to court prior parents that I've partnered with to ask, would you be interested in coming alongside and helping this other family? And so these are all one-offs. They're very heavy lifting. And then finally, Placer System of Care hires its very first peer partner, a family advocate. And man, is that like just the best thing ever. I'm just so thrilled. I'm so excited. And fast forward months, I'm working an after hour shift. These are 5150 evaluation services in an emergency room setting. And I get a call, but sorry, backing up, our after hour shift was also child welfare. So I get a call and it doesn't fit either box. It's not a child welfare emergency immediate response. It's also not a 5150 in the emergency department. It is a parent that is needing some support at home. And I talk with the parent just the best that I can and just offer, man, it's that kind of like that backup is either, take your child to the emergency department or, law enforcement kind of those. There's a lot of other conversation that happen, but those are kind of some of the stopbacks. And I come to work the next day and I meet our parent partner, our peer partner, and she says, "That was me last night." And I was like, whoa. For some reason, it didn't click. Somehow our paths hadn't crossed yet. And she really, really took time to ask, why isn't there a service that comes to a family's home when there is a psychiatric mental health emergency? And I accepted the challenge. But I also was coming from kind of like, well, these are kind of the boxes, and this is what fits in this box. This is what fits in this box. Why I'm sharing this with everybody right now is to say that that peer partner had one, the bravery to say, that was me last night. So to all of you right now, to all of our peer partners, to all of our community partners that are joining together with families, I want to say, I love the bravery that it takes to be able to show up and deliver things based upon your own life expertise. So that my story to you is that, because guess what? The peer partner 25 years ago was talking about mobile crisis. And now we have mobile crisis and it's a regular thing. And this peer partner was highlighting that. Was there an opportunity that our system could have created that before it became a mandate? You better believe it. And that is one of the themes that I want to share from today's just our sharings, is that the sky is the limit when we come together and collaborate and bring together ideas. And we can't do it without you. So you are qualified. Thank you for being here. So County Mental Health, Behavioral Health, we are providing an absolute array of services. It is everything from the prevention end of things, making the ability to be able to learn about stigma and reducing that stigma and equity in our health systems available. There's all kinds of great prevention grants that go on that the county mental health behavioral is responsible to kind of be a conduit and funnel out. So lots of stuff with the Mental Health Services Act, Behavioral Services Act, a lot of stuff there. All the way, so everything in between to just traditional counseling, often called psychotherapy, that's interchangeable, all the way community-based interventions, mobile support, like I mentioned, mobile crisis. The list is so all the way to what many consider the most intensive, which would be in-home intensive support through something like wraparound. It also includes the ability to help pay for psychiatric hospitalization, like under a 5150, if that is to happen, for individuals. And a lot of this is based upon Medi-Cal eligibility, but the counties also oversee a lot of funding for those that are in like an insurance gap or underinsured. So a whole spectrum of those services goes on. Next slide. So for some reason, just go with me there. When I just thought about, like the state is involved in so much, and it is this amazing dance that happens. And the song came to me, love got to do with it. And I grew up in the era of Tina Turner just bringing that song. I'm sorry, that's it. So what's state got to do? Okay, so spare you the singing, but you have that. What does the state got to do with it? Well, the state is amazing at I don't know how the state does it with the 58 counties and the 2 other jurisdictions and this and that. It is wild. California is wild. Oregon, I'm in Oregon right now. It's all a state jurisdiction. There are no, each county getting to do its own thing. It's amazing. We are like a microcosm. So California gets to do lots of experimentation. It's a very hard job to be at the state. It's also hard to be at the county, at the whims and ways of things being mandated but not funded and all this kind of stuff. But I'm just going to go through and just say, these are terms that you should become familiar with if you're not already. CalAIM is really the biggest update that I have seen in my career to mental health, behavioral health services regarding Medi-Cal population. So that is a big one, and it really helped streamline things. It has tried to make things easier to access for clients and easier to deliver for service providers. You've got the BHAI. Honestly, I really don't hear much about this at my level, but you can just know that it is a mandate that administratively things start getting shared, especially like when you think about that gigantic brick wall between substance use treatment services and all the other stuff. And there's that CFR 241, privacy thing, and helping try to streamline that so that an individual doesn't have to go to so many different providers to get really some basic needs met to be a better healing system. The BHSA is kind of the new name for MHSA, Mental Health Services Act, and that is kind of like where Medi-Cal funding isn't able to be used anymore for something, like Medi-Cal's the first payer. BHSA helps with a lot of creative services out there. So this is helping county mental health, behavioral health be very collaborative. Then you've got ICPM. And if you don't know ICPM, you just Google it, check it out, get into it. There's so much there. It is really what I feel like is the skeletal framework for how collaboration works on behalf of children, youth, and families. So check that out. And then, of course, HIPAA helps us protect individuals' information, but there are also specific rules about how we can collaborate and share information. So let's get into the next slide. So what are fair expectations? And when I say peer partner here, please slip in also community partner. What are your fair expectations in how mental health, behavioral health works in a system of care? And really, honestly, I bring it down to 2 main things. You have an expectation to be able to collaborate with us in the mental health, behavioral health atmosphere, and you have an expectation to be able to be a part of decision making that happens, because you are, in many cases, the live pulse of what is happening out there with the children, our children and families. And you also are bringing that perspective and that unique vantage point. Next slide. Okay. I'm going to go through really quick and just share some creative questions. I want you to jot down some questions for your system of care that you are interacting with. And if you are not interacting with it, please use this as good food for thought when you do, because if you're not, you need to be interacting with your system of care. And there's a way to do that. When mental health, behavioral health is partnering with probation, those can sometimes be 2, very siloed organizations. And our colleague Kyle will be speaking, more to this. I absolutely love partnering with probation. I find that the opportunity to do good is exponential when we do get to collaborate together. But again, the systems can be very siloed. So here's a question: Is mental health having some regularly scheduled leadership meetings with probation leadership? Is that coming together? And are our peer and community partners invited to that meeting as well? So that is a big one. This needs to be regularly scheduled. This needs to, it cannot be just an ad hoc thing. Too much time can go by and important families' needs can kind of be overlooked. So is there a regularly scheduled opportunity to check in and ask, how are our teams doing? How are some of these really complicated service situations, if they are so complicated, we need to ask ourselves, how are our teammates navigating that? Is there good communication? Does it seem that everybody, the ground is level for decision making with that family situation? So that is a must. Here's an example where a county can get ahead, where a system of care collaboration can get ahead of the state. There are some counties where the juvenile hall, the youth detention facility, where they have collaborated with mental health ahead of, there's a whole behavioral health initiative for the justice involved population. And essentially what this is doing is pushing in some services pre-release and making sure that there is really good post-release planning services happening, and then linkage and collaboration and communication happening. Counties have been able to do that in advance of this big initiative. And now this initiative is happening. So it's kind of like, it's all good stuff, but these are the conversations that happen. So the question can come up is, does mental health, behavioral health have a representative in the youth detention facility? And is there a peer partner, community partner representative also that has permission to go into the facility and be able to have access, secure access to the census that comes in, so that you can know, if you're a peer partner and you've been working with someone, that youth might come in and out of the youth detention facility a couple times before sometimes the family can even put together the wherewithal to reach out and update you and let you know. So these communication vehicles are essential. So is there something like that that can happen, that communication? So this is very highly sensitive information. Obviously, there need to be MOUs and the ability to hold on to that secure information, but there are ways that systems can do that. So these are expectations that peer partners should have of how mental health and probation work together. I know in Placer, they actually have had a full-time behavior, the mental health has had a full-time clinician in that youth detention facility for decades. And that has been an amazing example of collaboration. So can other jurisdictions do that? Ask that. All right, lots more to talk about. Let's get into the next slide. With child welfare, some of my favorite examples are with Red Team. So if you have not, if you're not familiar with Red Team, it stands for Review, Evaluate, Decide. I think I got that right. Someone will let me know. So this is basically kind of the the review process for just about every single child welfare referral that comes in. We hear this thing of like the hotline, a community member, a family member, a loved one calls with concerns, a professional calls in with concerns, worried for the safety of a child. Those get reviewed. Does your system of care have an opportunity for peer partners, community partners, and mental health, behavioral health? Are they coming to Red Team? So that is able to happen. So that could be an expectation. So that is a question to bring to your collaboration table when you're working as a system of care is, do you have a voice in that? So um, a lot of good can happen, and a lot of investigations that might not be necessary if that information, that collaboration can happen at the red team meeting. So an example is um, during the red team, um, can a behavioral health representative be able to say, oh yeah, we've gotten a lot of, there's been, a lot of 5150s. We've reached out, we've not gotten any word back, from the family. That could be an opportunity for a peer partner to, be extra equipped with that information to know like, okay, engagement is going to be really important here. Again, this is highly sensitive information. How counties navigate that, there are MOUs, there are ways to be able to do that. Um, and I want to say at this point, there are health and safety codes in California that do allow mental health and behavioral health to share basic information about their just if the family has kind of touched the mental health, behavioral health system, there are permissions to be able to share if it is related to the health and safety planning of that child in terms of child welfare or probation. They're needing to plan for the health and safety of that child. Mental health is able to share some basic information. This does not include full written assessments. It does not include what could be called like session notes or service notes, but it includes basic information that can be shared for that. And there does not need to be a specific release of information. If you are curious about that, I can follow up with the health and safety code that is there. That information, though, cannot be used for purposes of an investigation. So that is a careful balance. So please note that. Very important. So again, with that sensitive information, there are opportunities to collaborate with that. Let's go to the next slide. Partnering with our tribal and other community partners. This includes other groups that could be with does your county have Latino leadership councils such as Placer County does? There are probably many other examples of those organizations that exist like that, but in that theme, also with our regional centers, there are community partners. So a very broad, our family resource centers. When partnering with those, this is where relationship, I believe, really matters and really needs to happen. So I believe that we have an expectation to have relationship with one another. Ideally, is there somebody in the system that is designated as a liaison to those other groups and to those other organizations? And do those organizations and you as peer partners, do you have a liaison specifically with your county mental health and behavioral health? I find that to be incredibly important. The other question to ask is, what does the referral process look like? What is mental health, behavioral health using as their decision making for when to refer to you? This needs to be incredibly clear. You should be very comfortable with that and have some input about that process and what that looks like. So I find that to be very important. And then finally is what does the collaboration routine look like? How do you come together? Is there community leadership team meetings where you're coming together? Are there other leadership opportunities? This is another expectation that I believe that you can have and that you should be asking your system of care to be a part of. And the other is to just think about some of the advancements that have happened, like mobile crisis services stipulate that there is a peer partner integrated into that service delivery. So there are great advancements like that. So I think there's some great stuff ahead with child welfare in terms of bringing out a mental health, behavioral health staff, in conjunction with an investigation that might be going on. That's a delicate balance. How that happens should have your voice in that process. But again, looking at other places that maybe there isn't a mandate where you as a peer partner have to be a part of it. Why do we need to wait for the mandates? Let's be creative and think maybe your jurisdiction, your area can build in to say, hey, you know what? For all of these path ones, or all of these the path twos, we're going to invite the community partner to be a part of this. So designing that in. Very good. Next slide. And really quick, the Office of Education, that is such a great opportunity. In Placer, my experience with the Office of Education is we had an amazing opportunity for the 3 priority populations with risk of trafficked youth and unhoused and foster youth. And so the biggest question is, what does your interaction with that system of care look like? Do you have a voice? Do you have an opportunity to collaborate? I'm just going to kind of spin through the next slides. Next one. So, what are the most pressing needs that children and families have of the system of care? Absolutely, number one need is that voice and choice, the ability to be engaged early on. I think that's absolutely critical. So, for you as peer and community partners, please press into that and do that. Some of the largest feedback that I have gotten is that we do not treat engagement as a very just kind of like a mild, basic, straightforward thing. Sometimes to be creative, and we need to think about giving up early on if our first and second engagement attempts don't work. And so engaged early, creatively, and the voice and choice. And the last slide. So the one thing, what is the one thing that mental health, behavioral health can do better when teaming? This is a question I want to leave for all of you. I want you to be thinking about that. I want you to be thinking about how to use that question to come and partner with the systems of care around you in your jurisdiction. I think for us is that there's been a lot of change for mental health and behavioral health in the last couple of years with CalAIM, and then half the counties in California changed their electronic health record. It's been overwhelming, to say the least. And so I think with some of that stuff getting settled, I think there's an opportunity for us to be able to team better with all of you. But I want to ask you, what is that one thing that we can do better when teaming? That one question is keeping that posture open and available to be creative and to collaborate better. So please use that question as positive fuel when coming alongside all of your community or your county partners. So I'm sure I brought up a lot of good questions and other things that we'll try to follow up on. I really appreciate your time, and just know again that we cannot do this work without you. It will not be valuable without you at the table. So thank you for being here.
Gavin, thank you so very much. And for those of you who may have any questions for Gavin around behavioral health, mental health, we do have a targeted Q&A at the end of our presentation session this afternoon. Next, I would love to introduce Kyle Borg from San Bernardino. He is with probation. Kyle, come on in. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Hello. Can all hear me? We're good? Okay. Well, thanks for having me. I have the privilege of speaking on juvenile probation. My slides are going to be a little bit different. I'm kind of going over an overview of probation. And the reason is because when I started in probation, I applied for the job and I knew about this much of what I was getting into. So for me, I think it's helpful of just kind of a basis of what is probation, how would it affect me if I was involved in a family that was going through probation, or what are the different levels? So yeah, we'll get into it. My name is Kyle Borg. The next slide, please. Oh, cool, thanks. Again, my name is Kyle Borg. I'm a Division Director 2. I work in San Bernardino County. I've been here for 14 years, around that. This is San Bernardino behind me. So if you see my screen, that's beautiful San Bernardino. We're downtown. And this is my garden. I have one plant that I have alive down here and 2 others that haven't died yet. So that's, aside from probation, that's my success. Next slide, please. So with anything that that I get involved with, I think it's best if we start with why. You're going to find out really quickly I'm not as polished of a speaker as Gavin or Simon Sinek, but we think like, okay, why? Why does probation exist? What even started this whole concept of probation? And then we can get into the weeds of like the different supervision types. Next slide, please. So if we're looking at probation from a 10,000-foot level, the most simple form, right? So very broad overview. Someone somewhere commits a crime. That's where this all starts. And they commit a crime and they're actually caught. And from that, there starts a legal process. And it's different with any case, right? Every county is slightly different, but we all follow the same penal codes. So we're similar. Broadly speaking, a crime happens, someone is caught, a legal process happens where eventually they need to be held accountable for that crime. That's the same juvenile and adult. Now, when probation gets involved, a judge says, hey, I don't want to keep this person, whether adult or juvenile, I don't want to keep them in jail. I don't want to keep them in custody, because although the penal code will allow for this person to stay in custody for 2 years, I think it's better off that this person's released and they can go work on their issues in the community instead of while they're in custody. So if we keep that in mind, this person just committed a crime not very long ago. So the judge would like for them to work on their issues in the community, but right now we can't trust that person today, right? Do I know if I say, hey, go and do X, Y, and Z? We're not really there yet. Our level of trust isn't there. So I know, let's give them some guidelines that they need to follow. In probation, our slang is terms and conditions. So we have terms and conditions that this person needs to follow. They can be exclusionary, so they can be don'ts, like don't break the law, don't do drugs, don't have dangerous or deadly weapons, don't contact your victim. Those are some of the like exclusionary terms and conditions you can have. And they can also be good things that the judge wants to happen. So go to counseling, go to school if you're a juvenile, complete 20 hours of community service. Those things are positives that the judge and the legislature and whoever's involved with that case thinks this will help this person have a better success or outcome in the future. So now that's great, right? So they have a crime happened, a legal process happened. We don't want them in custody. We're going to give them some guidelines to follow to make them a better person. But how is the court going to know that these things are getting accomplished, right? So yeah, don't do drugs. Sure, yeah, I didn't do drugs, right? Like, don't have weapons. Oh yeah, I didn't have any weapons. Well, the court knows that they're being accomplished. I know we'll have a person called a probation officer follow up and make sure that they're meeting the terms and conditions that me as a judge gave them. And that's where probation comes in. So probation as a general term is, I'm an officer of the court. I'm a probation officer. I have a chief, but we report to the San Bernardino Superior Court, California. And we tell the court on a sometimes weekly basis, sometimes daily basis, if they're on like a house arrest program and we're monitoring them on GPS, are they doing what they said they would do when you let them out of custody? Next slide. That's it. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot more. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. There's actually a lot more, but that really gives us like a big overview of, okay, so why was probation even started? Next slide, please. I found a way to work a meme into my presentation. I think that's a personal goal. So there we go. So the next thing I'll talk about is the juvenile criminal justice system versus the adult criminal justice system, because there's inherent differences in each of these. So when I think back when I was a kid, I had two brothers, and I was often told, Kyle, don't hit your brother, right? And then what I would say as a rowdy kid was, why? Well, my mom would say, or else you're going to have this happen to you. Think of that as the adult criminal justice system. It's punitive. So if I do something, I know this is going to happen to me. I'm going to go on timeout, or I'm going to lose things, or I'm going to get spanked, or whatever it was when I was a kid. And every punishment I got, I deserved. I earned every single one of those. So that's the adult criminal justice system. It's really based off of punitive type of structure or framework compared to juvenile. So juvenile criminal justice is very much rehabilitative focused. So, okay, you did this, but if we go back to the metaphor of when I was a kid, we did, Kyle, you hit your brother. Don't hit your brother anymore. Why? Well, juvenile criminal justice would be understanding why you committed that crime and really changing your point of reference and your point of view to something more proactive, right? So, Kyle, don't hit your brother. Why? Well, because it really hurts his feelings, and you're his older brother. You're supposed to be a role model to him. If you hit him, then it changes, all these different. That's the frame of reference that we're looking at with juveniles. It's not just because, otherwise you're going to have to go to jail. We really try to look at the rehabilitative side, even to the point of the language is different. If you're an adult, you're convicted of an offense. That's what the judge says when they sentence you. You're convicted of X, Y, and Z. In juvenile, your charges are sustained or found true. And that way, when a juvenile goes and they do a job application, they don't have to say that they were ever convicted. The answer is no, I was never convicted. This charge was found true. So today, I'll focus on juvenile because juvenile is a little more complex. Adult is generally simpler, but they're really close. They have a lot of similarities between the two. And I did work in adult for a long time. So if you have questions at the end about adult, I can answer those about my experience in my county. But that's where I'll kind of go with the rest of the presentation. The one thing that I'll say as a caveat before I get into the levels is that both adult and juvenile have levels of supervision, right? It's called different things, but it's low, medium, high kind of framework for whatever they have in juvenile. They kind of have something like that in adult, low, medium, high supervision. Next slide, please. So there's a few different levels of low supervision, and I'm going to work from low to high. From my brain, it works better that way. And these are just different options that the court can impose. So if you see at the very top, WIC 654.2, informal probation, aka diversion. So WIC stands for the Welfare and Institution Codes. So those outline, those are the laws that we use when we're doing these types of supervision. So sometimes it'll just be called, we can call it diversion or we call it 654. So if you're in a meeting and they say, oh, they're on 654, it's diversion. If you're in a meeting and they say, hey, it's diversion, hey, I could look up WIC 654.2 and have a little bit of more of a detailed understanding of what's going on. 654, also known as diversion, this is the very lowest level. So it's also sometimes called informal probation. It lasts 6 months, but it can be extended to 12 months. It happens before adjudication. So what that means is in the court process, where court process is happening, the judge stops and says, hey, pause, time out. Don't officially tell me, youth, if you actually committed this crime or not. Right now, don't say anything. But if you and your parent voluntarily agree to do these things for 6 months, then your petition or the document talking about the crime, I'm going to dismiss the whole thing. So that's what diversion is. It's really trying to take a kid, and if you think about like a river, we're diverting them from the criminal justice system. We're putting a, some type of culvert in there to push the water the other way. So now they will not be on the criminal justice system path anymore. And if we're successful, then they will not go in the criminal justice area. But if you keep messing up, then the judge can say, hey, we're going to unpause this and we're going to open that back up, and you'll go straight down the criminal justice system like originally we were thinking of doing. So one of the main things about this is that it is voluntary. You have to agree to it as a youth with your parent or guardian. And it's 6 months, but it can be extended to 12 if you need to. Next slide, please. So 725, and see, I just call it, that's how it's kind of lingo a lot of times in probation, at least in my county. So 725 is also known as non-wardship probation. So this is the next lowest step. On this type of supervision, the judge finds that the youth committed the crime and they give them 6 months for the youth to change their life for the better. But it is a 6 months hard stop. In this situation, the judge, I'm sorry, the judge, where was I at? My notes. Oh yeah, so they have terms, right? So the terms and conditions that can be placed here are, don't commit any new crimes. You can have your things searched to make sure that you're completing the other terms and condition without a bench warrant. Drug testing, you can go to counseling, community service, write an apology letter to the victim, read a book, whatever the judge finds appropriate for your rehabilitation. And again, it's rehabilitation. It's not to pay for the crime. If this is successful, the petition will be dismissed and sealed. So that's big. If it's not successful, then they can declare the youth award. And we'll talk about what that means later. But at 6 months, the decision has to be made. So it's make or break. 6 months, either get your stuff together or we're going to increase it to a next level. Next slide, please. So for whatever reason, our county, we always just call this DEJ, or deferred entry of judgment. We don't use the WIC code on this one. Can't see that. So deferred entry of judgment is where the youth admits that they committed the offense. So there are some caveats to this. You have to be over 14 years old. It has to be a felony non-707B offense. So that's like a serious type of crime. And there's that third thing is you do have to admit guilt. You have to say, yes, I did this. Again, you're not declared a ward unless probation fails. And we'll talk about what that means on the next slide. And if you're successful here, the charges are dismissed and the record's sealed. If you're unsuccessful, then they call it lifting your DEJ, and then you're sentenced. Because in this, the judge has already found, yeah, you did rob that person, or you did, steal that car. Typical terms for this: search terms, substance abuse testing, counseling. This is the judge saying, okay, we know that this happened. We're finding that it did happen and you were the one who caused it, but we want you to be better. This can be anywhere from 12 to 36 months. Hopefully it's on the lower end if they're on DEJ. If it's not, it'll be pretty clear, and usually they'll lift it and bump it up a level. And I'll explain why in a minute. Am I going too fast? I know okay. So the next level is what most people would think of when they think of someone on probation. So this can be called 602 probation. This can be called formal probation. This can be called wardship. But this is, I was going to actually put in my notes that I had that it was the bulk of the people who I have on probation in San Bernardino County, but that would have been a lie. We actually have we're a larger county, so I'll just say that to start with. We have 738 on this type, wardship probation. And we have 557 on diversion, the very lowest level. On 654, we have 167, so about 175. Summer probation, 100, and DEJ about 25. So this is still 45% of the people we have, but all the others, the 54%, they're all lower level that we try to do to really divert kids from ever entering. So there you go, just a little side note. Fun fact. So formal probation is what you really usually you think about. And we put a lot of resources into our 602 formal probation wards. What happens here is the youth goes through the court process. The charges are found true and they're declared a ward of the court. So being declared a ward is actually a big deal, because what it means is the court is assuming legal authority for that child. So because of that, the youth can be arrested and placed back into juvenile hall. There's another thing that you can be removed from the home and placed, which I'll talk about later. Wardship is a pretty big deal because the county has to get very involved in this person's life. And remember, so it's up to 21 years old. So typically in San Bernardino, we're looking at whether we can dismiss or graduate, or we want to call it, a youth from probation at 1.5 to 2 years, 3 years, but technically it can be up until 21 years old. That's when juvenile jurisdiction ends. What I like to explain, so it's not the same as adult probation. Adult probation, you're on, I'm going to sentence you to 3 years felony probation, and you go for 3 years, and then at your 3-year end date, hey, I'm off probation today, unless the judge extends it, right? So there's a process for that. Juvenile's different. It's kind of like baking a cake. So you do all the things, you put all the ingredients together, and for us, it's like counseling and treatment and parenting classes and all that stuff. You put it all together, and when it's ready, you know, right? There's signs that you can look for. So like if I'm baking a cake and I pull it out and it's watery and a mess, it probably needs more time, right? But if I'm baking a cake and I pull it out and it's burnt to a crisp, there were signs that I did that too long. So that's what I kind of talk about when I say it's like baking a cake. So because it's rehabilitation, we're going to see a lot of those signs. You know, they're going to have clean drug tests. They're going to have some positive engagement with their PO. You know, every time they show up, they're not going to say, screw you, I'm not going to do this. That's a sign that, this cake isn't done yet. We need a little bit more time here to continue on. And then as soon as we have them finished, we don't want them to stay on probation. We don't want to be in their lives if we don't have to. At that point, we can exit their life and transition them into other supportive services if we need to, or have no system involvement in that child if that's better for them. Next slide, please. So we have terms and conditions. Like I said before, the court doesn't trust this person to make the best decisions yet, because either they have been on a lower level and proven that they need something higher, or because their first offense was to the point where they needed to be on a formal term of probation. But the court says, oh, you know, but we don't need them to be in juvenile hall. So out of our examples so far, this group of youth has the most terms and conditions out of the ones we talked about. Some of the stuff can be like, you know, violate no law, follow all reasonable orders of the PO, attend school, attend counseling, can have a curfew, submit to drug testing, have no dangerous or deadly weapons, have no drugs. And it can also be something that's specific to that youth. So if it was tagging related offenses that, you know, they did 36 different types of tagging. Okay, we're going to talk about, you know, not having tagging materials. That's kind of a silly example, but there, you know, it depends on that specific youth what the terms will be. There's a risk and needs assessment that's completed. So we look to see where should this, what's most urgent for this specific youth? What do we need to target? And then once we complete that, then we make a case plan based on what are their highest needs. And the goals in the case plan are generally what's needed for the youth to be rehabilitated of criminal needs and get off probation. And then home visits are regular. They're not scheduled in my county. We do them randomly because that's when you have the truthful representation of how they're living their life. A regular home visit, you're going to look if there's small issues or big issues, right? So if there's a small issue, like they're not going to their counseling, okay, we need to get you involved in counseling. A large issue would be, hey, there's a gun in your backpack. That's a large issue, right? And so if it's a large issue, we have the authority to arrest someone and bring them back to the court and say, hey, judge, you told them to do this. We have a large issue. Here's our recommendation, but it's up to the judge what happens. And that would be in a form of sanctions. Next slide, please. So what are the things that we do to try to get them on the right path? I'll speak for San Bernardino County. Most probation's department have some type of classes and programs. That's kind of like our bread and butter. Classes, programs, supervision. That's pretty much the three things that we do. For my county, we have like anger management classes, boys council, girls circle, substance abuse classes, parenting, life skills, weapon diversion, gang-related intervention classes, juvenile sex offender classes. And obviously it's tailored to that individual. So if they have a sex offense, you're not going to put them in gang intervention and not juvenile sex offender classes, and the same vice versa. There's also a range of programs we have. The info program is a type of therapeutic where they meet with the counselor. Most people know what the last one is, wraparound. We have a juvenile drug court, girls specific court program. It's called Girls Court, a mental health court, and then a specific program for those who are at risk or have a history of sexual exploitation, male and female. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that sometimes a youth or the judge has the ability to remove a youth from the home. That's called placement. And this happens if it's been determined that a youth cannot be supervised within that home. There's two really different reasons why this would happen broadly. If there's a victim in the home, so victim is mother or sibling in a sex offense case, we're not going to put that youth back into the home where the victim is. Typically, we'll have them either go to a different home to be supervised with, or we'll have a placement case like this. The other side of that is if the case has progressed and it's made pretty clear that in that home the youth is not going to be successful. One example I'll use is like generational gang household. So, and I'm talking about like involved still up to very criminalistic activity in the home. I can give that kid as much classes as I want, and he's going to go back to the home where they're saying, hey, let's go do this criminal thing. What's going to happen? Well, eventually we're going to find out he's going to keep doing bad things. And if that's the case, the judge can order the youth removed from the home and give them a different environment to try to be successful. And that's called placement. So the court orders that they're removed and they're placed in a STRTP. That's the jargon that you'll typically hear. It stands for short-term residential therapeutic program. Many years ago, it was known as like a group home type setting, but they can be different. They can have different looks. It can look like a house on a street where there's 6 youth there, or it can look all the way up to like a college campus. We have one of those within our county called Boys Republic, and it's a large scale program. They have a lot of vocational opportunities. What they all have in common is that they're, well, very few, but what they mostly have in common is they're unlocked facilities. They do have 24-hour staff. They have counseling, they have support for youth. They have therapists that are either contracted or on site. They have programming, they have activities, they have chores. They really specialize, they can specialize on different avenues. So you can have a sex offender program that only takes sex offenders. You can have gender specific, we take female presenting youth. Or you can have some that kind of have a specialization in like working with gang involved type youth. So that's what I would say is a very high level of supervision, right? One of the things that's really interesting about this is when a youth is removed from their home, probation technically becomes the foster parent for that child for that period of time. So they're a foster youth, and that means they have all of the foster rights that a foster care child would have. So my POs, my probation officers who work in placement have to know the penal code stuff, the welfare and institutions code stuff, and the foster care rights stuff when they're dealing with this type of population. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have the highest level that San Bernardino County has is called the Secure Youth Treatment Facility. If you're in a CFTM or a child and family team meeting, they'll often call it an SYTF or whatever that county's specific program is called. I always get in trouble for this by my SYTF people, but I really liken it to kind of like state prison for kids. So if you look at it that way, there are very serious crimes that happen to go to an SYTF. It is a locked facility. It looks like a juvenile hall, but a little bit more home-based. So, but it's locked. There are cells that they stay in at night. There are 24-hour probation staff, detention staff who are there watching them. The reason I get in trouble for saying it's state prison for kids is because they really, really do pour services into these kids. It is still rehabilitation, but for the most serious, sophisticated of youth in our county. Attempted murder, rape, a lot of the very, very bad things go there. The only level higher than this for youth is if the youth is charged as an adult and they go to adult criminal justice system. But this is the highest level that we have. Our treatment providers come in on site. They give all kinds of services. We have kids in college that are going there. We have vocational things. They build tiny houses to donate to different organizations. There's a lot of stuff they try to do, but this is the very most secure, intensive service that probation has in general. The time clock up there, you'll notice it's up to 25 years old. So a juvenile can be under juvenile jurisdiction until 25 years old. That's why it's 25. So if you're committed to life as a juvenile, technically you leave on your 25th birthday. That's that. And then typically with our county, we supervise them upon release. So we release them before they're 25 so that we can have a bit of time with them in the community to really try and get them on their feet. Otherwise, we lose jurisdiction. You can't do anything with that youth. Next slide, please. So what to expect as advocates. My 30-second kind of pitch to you guys is, these clients are going to differ. Probation clients typically have increased violence, a lot of resistance to treatment, to opening up, complex care issues. And a lot of them have come from history of abuse. So have that in your mind also. Clearly they've acted out in a way that put them in the criminal justice system, but there's stuff there that they're working through. When you're working with our probation officers, just know that they're different people, just like all of us, right? The length of time on the job varies on the person. Some are newer, some are 20 years experience, and some have 20 years experience in adult and then they come to juvenile. In my department, we move around quite a lot. So just know that the POs differ. The providers differ. We partner with multiple organizations. I think we have 10 or 15 organizations that we partner with. So if the team is not a right fit, it's okay to switch. There's nothing, what really, and my last little bullet point there is do what you think is going to help transition this kid from criminal to non-criminal behavior. So it's not going to hurt anyone's feelings if you need to switch providers, if it's going to help the kid. It's not going to hurt my PO's feelings if you say, hey, you know what, I think we should try to have a female PO instead of a male PO and talk to the supervisor about it. It's really what's going to move this kid from criminal to non-criminal behavior. Next slide. Communication is key. It's just very, very, very important to be open and honest. There's so much research that talks about how relationships are strengthened when there's open communication. I'm going to highlight that word empathy. I try to use that a lot. We have to be empathetic, but at the same time, as a probation officer, we're held to a standard of the court. So if I just keep on giving a youth chance after chance after chance, the judge will subpoena me and say, hey, Kyle Borg, why did you do X, Y, and Z? Your report says they're doing great, but then they failed 13 drug tests. What's going on here? Do you just not want to do your job, or what's happening? And there might be a reason, right? Hey, this kid is failed 13 drug tests for marijuana, but he used to use methamphetamine, or he used to use something much higher. So this is a win for him. We're working to get there. Anyways, but that comes again through communication. And then next slide, please. As advocates on your part of the team, my suggestion would be define some expectations. Some of you have been doing this a really long time and you know what your expectations are. Others are new to this game, and it's going to be really important to say, what do you want me to be? What's my role in this as a peer and family advocate, peer partner? Again, there's communicate clearly. You are the voice when that client, for whatever reason, can't say what they need to say. There's often times where the youth can't get the words out. Maybe they don't understand it. Maybe from their view of trauma and how they were as a child, they're not gonna be able to voice that. And that's when it comes to you guys. It's a heavy burden, but it's really awesome when you can act in the client's best interest and communicate for them. Hey, let's try this strategy, or maybe we can try this type of thing, or there's this therapy with horses. We think that might be a good fit. Bring that up, because sometimes it's a blind spot for the probation officer or the child and family team as a whole. And then huge here is just being honest with the youth. The youth that I deal with on a daily basis have a history of system mistrust for a variety of reasons. Some are very, very real and justified. That's the word I was looking for. Maybe they've been removed as a child. Maybe they've seen violence and nothing's happened from it. Being honest to them, you don't want to be the person who tries to sugarcoat something or sweeten it up or not be real with a person, because then it's not viewed as, oh, they're really nice to me and they kind of made that easier to swallow. No, you just lied to me. And so now I can't trust you like I can't trust fill in the blank. So yeah, even when I would arrest somebody, I would tell them ahead of time, not the day of, but I'd say, hey, if you continue down this path, I'm going to arrest you and you're going to go back before the judge. And I had a kid tell me at a, years later, oh yeah, he introduced me to his dad. Hey, he's the one who arrested me. And I said, yeah, but did you know? He's like, yeah, you told me. I appreciate it. It actually changed my life. So it really comes to that history of system mistrust can really start to be overcome with honesty. And next slide, please. And my last slide. So don't forget the journey you took to get here. Don't forget your why. We all signed up for a job working with this population, whether adult or juvenile, whether they're probation, or however they're involved in the system. We signed up for a reason, and don't forget that. Be true to yourself and you make a difference. That's it. Thank you so much.
Kyle, thank you so much. As a parent of a child who had his toe in the water and we narrowly missed a formally being in probation, it is individuals like yourself that absolutely gave me a different view of of juvenile justice and probation, and really allowing me to see officers and probation officers in a different light as a parent. So I really appreciate that. Your love of children and the work and wraparound and just having and wanting children to be better is apparent. And thank you. And with that, I would love to call in our next presenter, Raquel Neal. Raquel is part of my internal team here at the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice, and expert in her field of child welfare and all things kin first culture. And with that, Raquel, thank you so very much for joining us, and I would love to pass it over to you. Thank you, Raquel.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna. Welcome, everyone. Good to be here with y'all. My name is Raquel Neal, and my current role is a system of care specialist here at UC Davis with the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice. I had started my career in probation a long time ago, and even longer before that, I was a youth in the foster care system. And so I navigated that, and then I navigated my work in probation in school and behavioral health and in child welfare for a very long time. And I titled this Partnering with Purpose because we have not done the best job in child welfare with partnering with purpose. We just have not. So I just got to name the thing. And I've worked in counties where we collaborated with peer partners to the point where they were on our safety organized practice work groups. They were in our child and family teams. We did home visits together. They were an integral part of the child and family team. And you saw the value, you experienced the benefit, and worked in counties where that was not the case, and you saw the difference. So I want to share a little bit about partnering with child welfare and thinking of ways that we can collaborate together. Next slide, please. And we know our goals in child welfare are safety, permanency, and well-being. It is drilled into us from the time we are in grad school on a daily basis. And some of you may know this comes from the Adoption Safe and Families Act. And I have some prickles around the ASFA. I think we all can agree we want children to be safe. We want them to have permanent connections, ideally with their family, and that their well-being is of best interest. And we give parents, if your child is under the age of 3, 6 months to get things together that you've been dealing with your whole life, right? And if you're doing well and you're making some progress, we'll give you 6 more months. Yet still, right? That's not a lot of time to transform what has happened to you in your life, right? With that trauma responsive lens. And so if your child is over 3, you get 12 months. Nonetheless, the time frames have me a little prickly, and I understand the intention is that we do not want children languishing in foster care. We want children to be with forever homes and people that love them. However, there's no better place to be with your parents or your families, your community, or your tribal partners. Next slide, please. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at solo comment. Absolutely, April. And so I'm excited and relieved. I know we've been doing a lot of initiatives and a lot of work in child welfare over the last 30 years. And I'm really excited that statewide, we are now moving toward looking at our work with families through this kin first lens. And so I love this quote by Catholic Community Services, that a kin first culture values cultural permanency, recognizing there is no more culturally relevant resource than family. And so when I was removed, there was no money. I could have stayed with my own family had there been the things that are in place now. However, that wasn't the case. But I was fortunate enough to be with a non-relative extended family member in my community, stayed in my school, stayed near my family. And so I really do value kin first. And I want to provide this to you so that when you are working with child welfare, you can advocate from that kin first lens. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that I think silos us as organizations in trying to partner together, is that we don't speak the same language necessarily. Child welfare has their language, probation has their language, behavioral health has their language, community-based organizations, they have their language. And so when we come to the table, we think we're talking about the same things, and sometimes we're not talking about the same thing, right? Including all of the acronyms that we use. So shared language is incredibly important in thinking about, how does child welfare speak? What is their language? Next slide, please. And so that language that we do speak is, as someone mentioned earlier, really emphasized around the integrated core practice model. And the integrated core practice model, also known as ICPM, really builds and emulates a lot of the values and principles around the high fidelity wraparound alignment. And so our ICPM was just updated in August 2024. These are some of the enhancements that are reflected. We are really making central the voice of lived experiences. Families are their own experts. We're making a tremendous shift in how we see families, how we show up with families, making sure that we're emphasizing tribes, including them as partners. A lot of what we're doing now is really grounded in race, equity, and social justice. We want to make sure that we're being community-based, really living out what least restrictiveness looks like. We talk a lot about least restrictive care in child welfare. However, when we get to the table, we're making really quick decisions, and sometimes it's easier to put them in a resource family that is not their family, right? Or a shelter, right? And so we really need to slow down our work with our community partners, and really think about how we can make sure that this child stays in the home if all possible, and or with family. And so our principles are, again, teaming and collaboration. We want to make sure that we are having high quality child and family teams. And frankly, if our families and our peer partners aren't at the table and it's just professionals, that's not a high quality child and family team. We don't know what to, we don't want to create plans for families. We want to create plans with families, right? So that they increase their own assets, increase their ability to make decisions without system intervention when at all possible. So we want to start with the end in mind, and making sure when we show up with the family, it might be the first time we're knocking on the door doing an emergency response investigation. It could be independency investigations where we are now in court and having to make different decisions. Perhaps they're in family reunification, and we're trying to figure out what is the best path forward to make sure that this child can go safely home with their own parents. And if not, how can we keep them connected to those who love them and those who they love. Next slide. And so the ICPM is more than just a theoretical framework with how we do the work. We need to really practice the behaviors that align with being honoring the voices of lived experience. We need to be practicing the behaviors that include the youth and family. And so that looks like being honest and being transparent, and there's levels of transparency. We have confidentiality, and so of course we have to let parents and families know what we're not able to tell them. And respect looks different for every culture, and so really meeting that family where they are really looks like asking them what they need in order for them to feel like they can be open and honest with us. What does it look like for us to show up differently than perhaps child welfare has shown up differently in the past? And so next slide, please. So our goal is really looking at, how do we build partnerships with family? And I think somewhere in the ICPM, there may be a reference of, or maybe it's the old version of, equal partnerships. And I want to just emphasize that we need to be so open with parents and children that we have to also let them know where they may not have decision-making capacity, where me as a child welfare worker or a supervisor may not have decision-making capacity, and the role of the court in that, right? And so working with our partners, really gathering the information needed from the family. Sometimes as a child welfare worker, they're not going to share with me what they're going to share with a peer partner. And that can get a little sticky sometimes, right? That can get a little sticky sometimes. And also, I've seen peer partners do an amazing job at navigating what they know that families need to know, how to speak to them in way more plain language than I can about the court process, And so really making sure that we model teaming at all, whether it's the first knock on the door, whether it's the first phone call, whether it's at a child and family team meeting, whether we're saying so long to a family, we need to really model those practice behaviors, and we need to be accountable. I've showed up with families and they have said, you know, my last worker, this happened, or the last time child welfare was involved, they took my kids. I didn't even know what them, right? And so they have these experiences in child welfare. And so when we show up, sometimes I'll say, you know what, we didn't do a good job. We could have done a better job, perhaps, at engaging you. What does it look like now? Right? What does it look like now for us to shift your past experience and really lean into what you and your family need to be successful? And I've seen that that work, and I've seen parents who have had 8 children removed, and this is their 9th child, and the different way of engaging them resulted in them keeping that child that they were almost about to lose, reunifying with many of the other children that were lost in the system. And so when someone, I think, talked about relationships, right? Building relationships, building connections through being honest and transparent. And we really need to show up in a different way. And I think many of us across the state are doing just that. Next slide. And so from having a shared language, we want to have a shared understanding. Oftentimes parents don't even know why their children have been removed or what they need to do to get their children back, and how can peer partners support with the journey of reunification or transitioning to off of family maintenance. Next slide, please. Oh, was that the next slide? Okay. Oh, sorry, y'all. So our vision in child welfare is really that every child finds solace and safety within their loved one's care. And if they do have to be separated, and we should do everything we can to prevent that, but in the event that they do have to be separated, again, that they stay unified with their families, communities, and tribes. Next slide.
Did I miss a slide, Raquel, when I was transferring over your information?
Yes, that's okay. I got a little, it's all right. That's what we do. We'll make it happen. It's all good.
Well, Raquel, you are a powerhouse, and I love that you're dropping the truth bombs, never sugarcoating anything, speaking absolute truth, and never letting anything lie under our feet. I did drop 3 resources that you were talking. We dropped the ICPM behaviors. It's the 12 behaviors pulled out from that larger 182 page guide. I also dropped the ICPM guide itself and a 2-page infographic around the integrated core practice model to help explain the integrated core practice model to both youth and families. Having everybody to come to the table and saying the things and being clear and concise and being a true champion for teaming, especially from the child welfare lens. Raquel, I cannot do this work without you. Thank you so much. And with that, I would love to call in our last presenter, Lizzie Dembas. Lizzie will be speaking on teaming with family serving systems around tribal engagement and tribal considerations. Lizzie is our team's looming subject matter expert in all things tribes. So thank you, Lizzie. Come on in.
Oh my goodness, Donna, you are too kind, my friend. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday afternoon. We are rolling into the middle of the afternoon, and you have been here for a little bit of time. So I'm going to do my best to keep us going and keep us engaged here. And I just have so much respect and appreciation for the people who spoke before me. I have an entire page worth of notes in front of my face. And I believe each and every single person spoke to some of the things that I'm going to speak with you all about today. James, if you can roll me into the next slide, please. Gavin, I really appreciate what you said about qualifications and what you are, what you're not, what you've done, what you've not done. And that really stuck out to me because, hello, here I am. My name is Lizzie Dembos. I am currently a workforce development specialist with the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice. But before I am my professional things, I am also a Caucasian non-native female, and I am here speaking to you today about teaming with tribes. I do not claim to be an expert as it relates to this topic, rather framing it as a lifelong learner and extremely passionate under the topic and kind of the umbrella of the Indian Child Welfare Act and teaming with tribes. Also included kind of in my professional experience that I want you all to know about is that I am a former child welfare social worker and a former child welfare social work supervisor. So today what I'm really going to be doing is kind of dabbling between these three lenses as I talk with you all about my journey really of unlearning and learning. And a lot of what I'm going to be speaking with you all about really relates to culturally respective and culturally responsive practices. And again, each of our presenters sort of dropped some nuggets along the way and connected the threads here for what I'm going to speak with you all about. I also just want to say really quickly, I will share kind of transparently and vulnerably about some of the things that maybe I didn't do as well, that I have since learned better. And if any of you have seen this in your practice or relate with some of the things that I'm speaking about, I just want you to know that I come here from a place of humility and encourage you all to not cast any sort of shame or blame or judgment upon any of these things that maybe you have seen in your own practice. Rather, let's use this as an opportunity for growth and development. So with that, James, roll me forward, please. Thank you. One of the things that I've heard somebody else speak about, Matthew Franklin, he is one of our newest UC Davis instructors, and he speaks a lot on this topic of teaming with tribes. And he started off a training asking the audience, how many of you know, and you can do it here right now, please do, put in chat, how many of you know how many federally recognized or in non-federally recognized tribes are in the community that you live in and that you serve? I'm curious if you know that. How many federally recognized and non-recognized tribes are in the community that you serve or where you live? Hey, Alice, good to see you. 10, Mendocino, 17, Sabrina, I'm not sure how to say your name. I'm not going to try. I don't want to butcher you, my dear. Totally okay if you don't know. And I will say, truth be told, when I started my practice in child welfare, I didn't know either. And that's okay. But that is the first stop on this learning journey together, friends. I just shared a resource in chat with you, and I really encourage you to open it up and save it. Keep it. It's not a one and done resource. This is something that you can come back to. Yeah, thank you, Alice. We have 109 federally recognized tribes in the state of California, and we have over 50 non-federally recognized tribes. We have a tremendous amount of Native and tribal nations here in California. So paired with this, why am I asking this question and pausing here first? Because that was one of the things that I wish that I would have done differently. I wish that I would have educated myself a little bit more, especially starting with what are the local tribal communities around the area that I was living and serving, so that I could lead at least with some baseline knowledge of who those communities were and who those potential partners were going to be. So I encourage you to do the same. Thank you, April, for that comment in chat. And yes, please, there is lots of other knowledge and experience on this topic. Some of you I've seen in many spaces on this very same conversation, and please continue to drop your nuggets of wisdom to elevate the learning in this space. Next slide, James. Okay, so one of the other things that I did not have an understanding coming into practice as a child welfare social worker was what tribal sovereignty meant. And so just to kind of, again, set some ground, like level setting, is that tribes are sovereign nations, right? They have the right to self-governance of their communities. It's citizens, it's members, AKA citizens. Okay, they have certain rights and protections because of this, and there are many. One of them being closely related to our work, directly related to some of our work, which is the Indian Child Welfare Act, or otherwise known as ICWA. So previous to ICWA's passage in 1978, a quarter to a third of children were being removed and separated from their tribes and adopted out to non-Indian families. Children are the most vital resource for tribes, the health, their well-being, and their future prosperity of their community. And their prosperity really relies upon children being kept close and raised within their communities. And I really love this quote because it really captures that. And there was a tremendous amount of advocacy done from tribal leaders throughout the nation, as well as those who were directly affected by the child separation practices occurring leading up to the passage of in 1978 to help elevate and bring awareness to Congress why this law was so important. So ICWA gave authority back to tribes in the matters of state-led child separation practices, as well as the accompanying court process. Next slide. So we don't have a ton of time to go into all the components of the Indian Child Welfare Act. It's quite technical, and my experience in being in a training space is that a lot of people have many questions and are quite confused. So there will be other opportunities for learning for you to further your understanding about the Indian Child Welfare Act, but we can't talk about teaming with tribes without talking about ICWA and why it matters. First and foremost, it's a remedial statute to stop the unwarranted removal and placement of Indian children in non-Indian homes. Like I said, a third to a quarter of children were being removed and separated completely from their tribes. Okay, so that was the child separation practices taking place beforehand. So every component of the Indian Child Welfare Act intends to remedy or make right those practices, okay? It intends to protect the best interests of Indian children and tribes. It intends to prevent altogether the breakup of the Indian family and to make sure that the citizenry of its tribes can be maintained. So one quick takeaway for you and your team, if you are not currently practicing in this way, you can start to inquire. If you are working with a child or a family that you know is involved in child welfare, that you can start to inquire about, is this an ICWA case? Do we know if this child or this family has ancestry? Is there a tribe involved or a tribe that we need to be teaming and partnering with and reaching out to? So that's a great place to start. Next slide. ICWA's protections for tribes mean that a tribe is involved in all aspects of decision-making when an eligible or enrolled citizen child is involved in a child welfare case, okay? So I think one of the things that's important to note in this blended space is that not every child or family that you are working with, ICWA will not apply, right? Some of you work with families outside of child welfare and outside of juvenile probation. The Indian Child Welfare Act does not apply. However, there are still components in the spirit of the law that definitely could benefit from being brought into your work and teaming with that family, and also potentially with, if they are an enrolled member and are active in their tribal communities, with their tribe as well. Tribes know what the best interest is for their members and their community, and they are amazing and incredible partners to learn from and to have included in that teaming, collaboration, and communication process. But in the case where it is an ICWA case, they have to be involved in all aspects of decision-making and family planning. That's full stop. Full stop. Next slide. Okay, and just some additional ICWA protections. That strength in teaming that is good for you all to know, depending on your understanding of the ICWA. The Indian child is required to be a member of the child and family team. In some cases or situations, I know there's flexibility around the youth involvement in the child and family team meetings. And there's some practices where the child is not necessarily involved, right? And I know that this space, we've already been talking about it a lot, and peer partners are really incredible about elevating family voice and youth voice, right? Youth voice and choice, nothing about us without us. And in the case of an Indian child, they are a required member. In addition to that, the tribe is also a required member of the child and family team. So again, two just really important things for you all to note around the requirements. And again, a practice tip for you is that you can elevate this, right? And bring it back to your team and ask a question around the status of the child, if it's an ICWA case, and whether or not a tribe is a part or a party of the case, so that we know then to be conducting outreach and communication with them so that they are included in the entire process and decision-making process as well. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to kind of shift us out of like the lecture component of the Indian Child Welfare Act, and I'm really going to focus on me, Lizzie. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about my journey and my unlearning and my learning, with the hopes that it supports you all in your growth and development. So part of the reason why I got things I was off base or mistaken was due to from my own socialization. So I learned an incomplete version of the United States history, and the version that I learned erased the truth about tribes and or largely distorted the truth about tribes and Native American peoples. Okay, so incomplete history means an incomplete understanding. So I walked in as a child welfare social worker with a very incomplete understanding about Native American history in our country and in our state. Not only that, I grew up in a very rural, predominantly white community. So I was super uncomfortable talking about culture, especially when it came to talking about culture that was different than what I grew up around. And as uncomfortable it is to admit, this absolutely influenced how much value or respect I placed or did not place on having conversations around culture and community, particularly around teaming with tribes and Native American children, youth, and families. So really for me, the key to my success has been knowing thyself, having some self-reflection in my practice work to start to unpack some of these uncomfortable truths so that I could be of greater service to the communities that I was supporting. James, next slide. One of the first things that I had to admit was that I was perfectly imperfect, and that I had to commit myself to a lifelong journey of learning and unlearning. So I want to just be here and normalize for you all that unlearning is ongoing, and the learning growth is a lifelong process. Being humble enough to say, I don't know what I don't know, I need help. And reaching out and learning takes a lot of courage and bravery, but there's also a tremendous amount of strength that comes from that. Okay. And curiosity as well, leaning into curiosity, especially when we don't know, and especially when we're uncomfortable. So I can say from where I sit today in my journey, I've done a good job, so I'm told, at building relationships with our tribal partners throughout the state of California on various projects and programs. And the one thing that consistently rings true from those individuals, the reason that they trust me and have built great relationships with me, is because I've been humble enough and lead with humility and curiosity. So that's my second or third lesson at this point for you all, is to really lean into this when it comes to strengthening relationships and building trust, not just with tribes, but everybody that we work with. Next slide. Something else I had to unlearn. So there, under the Indian Child Welfare Act, there is provisions around inquiry, and I'm not going to go into that. I won't have time, but I saw inquiry into ancestry and cultural heritage as a compliance task. It was a box to be checked instead of an opportunity to connect. Okay. So I had a mentality that asking about ancestry and heritage and tribal membership was something that was a yes or a no, not something that was going to be a tool for relationship building and getting to know somebody. So inquiry, yes, is a mandate and something that does need to be done and be in compliance with. However, it is so much more than that. And once I started to unlearn this notion and see it as a tool for relationship building, I really started to enjoy asking more of those questions because it allowed me to get to know the person in a different way. So that mindset also really reduces down something that's deeply important and personal to a formality, right? We don't want to practice from that space. It's a doorway to relationship. And then last but not least on this slide, approaching relationships in a transactional way was something that I was used to practicing, not leading from a space of truly, genuinely trying to connect and build a relationship, right? So instead of leading to get to know somebody and build mutual trust, respect, and understanding, I saw things from a transactional lens. James, next slide. So what did I learn, right? I said this already, that conversations about heritage, ancestry, and culture are relational tools, not compliance measures or checkboxes. And that culture is itself a protective factor. So one of the things, again, speaking from my own experience as a practicing social worker, I was not having these conversations about heritage and culture and ancestry, and my assessments and my family planning left out these components. But we know that culture is a protective factor in of itself, that when children are connected to their communities and their culture, it provides strength, belonging, and connection. And that when we know this information as a team and we have a general understanding of this, that we can strengthen and support those systems, but more than that, also leverage them when the child and the family needs them most. Okay, our decision-making tools and the means that we have to help us be informed as members of child and family teams are only as good as the information that we either gather or put into them. Next slide. Oh yeah, my discomfort was shutting the door to deeper connection, relationships, and trust. So my unwillingness to sit in my discomfort and unpack the reasons why I was uncomfortable was something that I really had to unlearn, that it was shutting the door. And I didn't want to practice in that way. I wanted to have different relationships with the moms and the dads and the kids and the families and the support networks and the everybody in between. I wanted to have really good relationships with those folks. And I saw that my discomfort was a direct barrier to that happening. Not only that, I think oftentimes in this space, when we're asking questions about culture and ethnicity and all these things, some of us, myself, I will speak from my own experience, I thought I was doing the right thing by not saying anything because I was worried I was going to say the wrong thing. Okay. And I can assure you, I have said the wrong thing. There's a chance today I may even say the wrong thing, but what I have done and learned is that it's okay. And we can make repair when we say the wrong thing, right? But it's better to ask and to try than to not at all. So in reality, I was just appeasing my own comfort and closing the door on relationship building. Next slide. So what did I learn out of that? That it's my own fundamental belief that we're responsible for paying attention to the areas in our lives, especially our work lives, where we feel discomfort inside of us. That it's a doorway into learning about ourselves. It was a doorway into learning about me. And I learned that if I didn't start to manage this, it would ultimately, at the end of the day, impact the family that I was trying to help, and that their outcomes were going to be negatively impacted. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to have a hand in that. So I wanted to learn how to check in about my biases and make sure that they were not impacting the family in any kind of negative or unintentional negative way. For example, being in a position to have such influence and power about decision-making, right? That's something that we need to be in right relationship with. And I also learned that curiosity isn't comfortable. Especially when you're talking about yourself and holding up the mirror. But I learned that reflection isn't extra work. It's just part of the work, and that it's a really important part of this work. Next slide. This was a big one for me. I was the social worker in the room that was trying to overpromise and underdeliver. That's what I ended up doing. I was underdelivering because I was overpromising. I often said yes with very good intentions, but I didn't follow through or follow up, right? And unbeknownst to me at the time, and what I know now, is that I unintentionally was mirroring historical patterns of broken promises between government entities and tribes, which was only reinforcing mistrust and trauma. Whoo!
Where's my mic? I need to find it. Oh, that one hit me right in the gut, Lizzie.
Yeah, it hit me in the gut saying it right now. Oh, and I'm laughing maybe because I'm a little uncomfortable. But honestly, this was huge for me. This was really huge for me. So, James, next slide. If I can leave you with anything out of what I've shared in the last however many minutes, is that trust is built through small, consistent actions. Okay. And it's really important for us as representatives of systems, and some of us as governments, that we kind of start, not kind of, we start in a deficit with families. Raquel spoke about this a little bit. We also start in a deficit with tribes because of the historical traumas that have taken place between our government to government relationship. So if you're going to start looking and trying to improve even in 1% capacity, I encourage you to look at the ways in which you can start to build trust through small, consistent actions over time, because that is what's going to lead up and make the most profound impact in relationships with and teaming with tribes. All right, next slide. Okay, so the way in which that I view this audience, and particularly those of you who are in roles of parent and youth partners, I see you as being able to do, well, let me back up. In my experience, I watched my parent partners and my youth partners build trust quicker with the families I was working with. And I think Raquel spoke to this a little bit, okay? So, and on the heels of what I just said, as a representative of a child welfare agency who starts out in a deeper deficit, in my own opinion, in particular with building relationships and trust with tribes, I would look to you to help me rebuild trust with that tribe, whether it's a social worker or anybody else, okay? And here are some ways in which you can do that or continue to do that. And you guys will have this slide deck, and I was intentional about putting all the words on the screen. So I'm actually not going to read through every single one for the sake of time, but I do really want to make a point about a couple of them. Providing food and cultural openings, asking the tribal representative for input on things that make the meeting more comfortable for the family and the tribe. That's a big one. A lot of tribes, like their reservations are in isolated or remote or rural areas, and coming to a meeting at your office or your agency may not be the easiest thing for them to do, right? That's just one example. So asking them if they have a space that they would like to use, or somewhere that you can meet in the middle that's comfortable, and also whether or not they would like to open up the space with a blessing or a cultural offering or some food. So the other one I also want to acknowledge is being flexible and accommodating the tribe's input in addition to the family on things like when and where and how often to meet. Tribes are often an afterthought. At least in my experience, they were often an afterthought and were not included in the coordination process. And they are a partner. They are a full partner. They are long-term partners, not just one-time collaborators. And it is something that we can all do to make sure that their input is included in even the decisions about when and where and how often to meet. All right, next slide, James. Okay, so self-reflection, like I said, was huge in my learning and my unlearning, and still remains to be a part of my practice day in and day out of my life. So it would not feel right if I didn't leave you with a few questions that you can self-reflect upon outside of this space. Where do I treat requirements as checkboxes instead of opportunities for connection and relationship? How do I show cultural humility and curiosity in my daily work? And what small, consistent actions can I take to build a relationship with my local tribe? Maybe these are questions to sit with. Maybe these are questions to talk to your supervisor about. Maybe these are questions to talk to a trusted colleague about. I'm not sure how you want to engage in self-reflection, but I encourage you all to continue that journey or start that journey if you have not. And last but not least, I want to leave you all with some resources because James, next slide. These resources for me are important because you're able to do additional learning outside of the space. There's so much about the things that I just barely talked about here today. And one of the things, again, attached to my learning was learning about the why and learning about the truth in our history here in the United States and specifically California when it comes to Native American and tribal nations. Okay, so all of those words on this slide, they're hyperlinks to videos and to resource guides and to additional websites. And you, I think, will have a copy of this PowerPoint, so you should be easily able to just click on those resources. And I just really tremendously encourage you to step into allyship and advocacy. And the tribe is ultimately going to be the expert of that tribe and their citizens. But at the end of the day, we all have a part in learning and taking on some of this for ourselves. So I encourage you on your journey to continue that outside of this space. And I thank you all for the time to be here today.
Lizzie, thank you so very much. What a powerful presentation. I know there's one thing that I appreciate not only personally, but professionally is authenticity and integrity. And not only have you shown that today, but Raquel, Kyle, and Gavin, thank you all so much from sharing from your heart and also your professional and personal experience navigating family serving systems. And as someone with lived experience and who has navigated systems with Jacob Robert Shaw, it is frustrating and vulnerable and emotional. And I really appreciate you giving us a inside look to each one of the systems that you all have been a part of for so many years. It's so appreciative. I am collecting all of the resources that you all have been dropping throughout our webinar, and I am going to create a Word doc. So please, once this recording is up on our website, not only will the PowerPoint be available, but you will see a Word doc with all of the resources that everybody has dropped here today, because they've been invaluable and appreciated. So those will be available as well. I will fix the PowerPoint as well, the PDF, so you can get into those links if you were unable to get into it today. I did drop them separately into the chat about 3 minutes ago, so you can grab them now and put them on a Word doc. I'm going to have James launch our evaluation now while we go into the few questions that were asked in our chat. If you are a co-host, please do not click the X. If you do, you will X out our evaluation. Just leave it there. We do look at all of your feedback in our evaluation. So if you have the time to provide us with feedback, we do read it, we value it, and we do input it moving forward in our future webinars. So please, please, please. With that, our first question came in for Gavin, and Katrina asked a question around when partnering with our other organizations doing outreach. They table together at events, they make sure they know what we're doing. How do you make a referral and have a way to follow up for your family and clients?
Thank you so much for the question. Is the question how to make a referral to the county, to say a county mental health department?
And Katrina, if you're still here, I would love for you to lean in and come off mute.
Yes, I am actually.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Being able to, if you're working for a nonprofit or any other organization, being able to continue to have those ties with the county because you're inherently kind of separated from them, being able to make those correct referrals and understanding what county systems are still active and which ones aren't.
Well, a lot of your question might be answered with the CalAIM initiative. It simplified the process for youth, parents, and other caring supports. Could be a child welfare, could be a probation officer, it could be a child's private therapist that wants to make a referral to the county mental health. Now, this only applies to youth that are eligible or should be eligible for Medi-Cal, and it's a screening form, and I can follow up with the resource center to make sure that gets added in so that people could see. On the state website, there is an example of all of the screening questions that an interested party like you, someone say at a nonprofit, and would be able to call on behalf of a client. And so it's really helpful to see the questions that you'll be asked in advance so that you can, not have to scramble and think in the moment. So I'll make sure to follow up with that, but it really does help clarify that. And then just in terms of who, as a nonprofit, would be to ask, it's okay to ask for a supervisor just to find out, hey, who's a good contact person at the county when I have questions about that. That does not put us off as leadership. That's a part of our job. So every community member has the opportunity to ask. And if for some reason you could also get asked just for the worker of the day to say, hey, I'm looking for who would be a good point of contact for some follow-up questions. So everybody. So thanks so much for asking that question.
There's a question in the chat from Leslie. Why does the system give everyone the same 2-hour-a-week visits when some kids are removed because of physical or sexual abuse and some because of their parent has some mental health concerns? And I'm looking to you, Raquel, that maybe that might be one for you to answer, or even Lizzie with your experience.
And the question is around why everyone gets 2 hours. That's a really good question. And I'll be honest, from my perspective, it has a lot to do with this is how we always done it. Always gave everybody 2 hours a week, so we're going to give everybody 2 hours a week, right? When there's infants involved, I would typically advocate for way more visits than 2 hours a week, right? So I would say it's important to ask those questions, as Lizzie mentioned. 2 hours a week, is this all I can get? When will it be increased? When will I get unsupervised, right? So it's really advocating for the system to stop doing things the way they've always done.
Raquel, I love that. And I have a follow-up question in our last 3 minutes here. How can a peer partner, either parent or youth advocate, or even any other collaborating system partner, not seem adversarial when they're asking questions around more time, more visits? Because I feel like sometimes in our role, that's how we're perceived, as being sometimes adversarial.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And I think that tethers back to the shared language. Right? My role, my purpose to be on this team is to align with the goals that you have for the family. The family's voice and choice, advocating for what the families need, right? Moving in the direction that I understand integrated core practice model. And it don't come off snarky, just the fact that you have a shared language and I understand your shared vision. And sometimes in child welfare, we get focused, like Lizzie said, on compliance. And we're so used to doing things the way that we've always done them, that we need you peer partners to say, hey, I understand we're doing things differently. How can I help?
I love that. And looking at, child and family teaming and their Super 8 in the agenda, there is a shared vision that is created within that child and family team process. So leaning into that and speaking that same language is perfect. Kyle, in our last minute, I'm sending a question your way. Clarifying question: does probation do any training or give the family youth information on the type of charge probation they are on or what to expect? Or is that absent in most court involvement proceedings?
So typically if it's the front end, that's going to come from their public defender or whatever their We have a court PO who sits in court physically in juvenile court, but there's not enough time to really go over that. That'd be the public defender's role or their conflict panel, whoever's assigned. What we will do is a good job of, after they're on a certain type of supervision and that's ordered, we'll do an orientation with them to go over all the terms, everything that's expected, so that it's clear. And then we'll also do a case plan. So it's very, very clear afterwards. But I would definitely reach out to the public defender and be involved in that conversation.
Thank you all so much. It is 3 o'clock. I see the questions coming in fast and feverish. We're going to pull those. I will also add those answers to the resource doc for you, because I do also appreciate that. So those of you who didn't get your questions answered, look for our recording, these questions and the answers, or where to guide you for a resource for the questions, all of the information that came in. Thank you all so very much. We are going to have a follow-up with teaming with our family serving systems, where we're going to highlight education and regional centers, also possibly bringing back more from child welfare, and teaming with tribes and tribal youth and families, probation, and other system partners that we come in contact with, because I think it's very important. When I started as a parent partner 15 years ago, I had no idea how to work alongside system partners. I kind of figured it out as I walked along with the mud on my shoes. And so hopefully this is a safe space where we can learn together and ask questions, and really learn about teaming, communication, and confidentiality. With that, have an amazing Wednesday. I appreciate all of you. You're all doing amazing work to just uplift youth and families across the state of California, so those behind us can have a better experience. I appreciate you all. We'll see you in the sandbox. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, folks. We'll see you next time.
Bye, thank you.